took forever. I kept getting this weird message that my Zoom client was updating. I've never seen that before. I couldn't get it to stop. Um, Sarah, hopefully you got word to the people, everybody gathered here, that once again, I was dealing with a little technical issue and no tech support puppy tonight either. So anyway, folks, thanks for hanging in there. We have a lot to cover tonight. So let's go ahead and get started. Mhm. There we go. All righty. That's what I have to say on a number of levels. Folks, if you had a chance to read last week's Good Natured column, you know that we talked about a vine that has a kind of a not so great reputation in this area, and it is called Oriental Bittersweet, and it looks like this. Its Latin name is Celastris orbiculatus, and it means the evergreen plant that has rounded leaves, kind of what that translates to. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, bittersweet. I love bittersweet. I know I used to be a fan of bittersweet before I realized there was more than one kind. I remember growing up, we had a bittersweet vine on the fence. It was one that my mom had found fond memories of from growing up downstate on their family's farm. And one time when we were down visiting Grandma and Grandpa, she got a shovel full and brought it home, and we put it on the fence. Um, I don't remember it spreading. I do remember my dad wanting to put, I believe, a clematis or something on that part of the fence. So the bittersweet ended up going away. Um, so I can't tell you for sure whether we had American or the dreaded Oriental bittersweet, but yes, we do have two kinds that are pervasive throughout northern Illinois. And the Oriental, the reason I put the topic when I did, as we enter the holiday season, this vine, even the invasive one, the Oriental vine, is kind of attractive, and it occurs throughout in many woodlands throughout our area. And I think a lot of people see that and they think, oh, I want to add this to my wreath, to my holiday arrangement. I want to put it in a cornucopia that I'm going to put on my table. And then after the event or the holidays are over, sometimes this makes its way back outside, and that adds to the way that it spreads. Um, Here's some examples. These were all on various Pinterest sites of ideas. You know, people could gather. In fact, I came across a couple of blogs that were just raving about bittersweet, and they didn't make any distinction between the non-native and the native varieties, which was a little alarming because think about it, most folks out there don't give it a second thought. They see the pretty, they got some clippers, and away they go. Now, there are a lot of references online. There's a lot of books that delve into the topic of how you tell the difference between Oriental and American bittersweet. And when you see a nice graphic like this that's labeled, um, it makes it look really simple. Um, the main thing that most of these references point out is that the fruit on the flowers and the fruit on the non-native variety extend along the leaf axils along the branch, whereas in the native or the American bittersweet species, the fruit is clustered at the end, the terminal ends of the branches. One way to remember that is you can save the best for last. Um, some sites will point out that, well, actually, it even says it on here that the fruit of the Oriental variety has a yellow capsule, and the fruit is orange, has an orange capsule on the American variety. But boy, the distinction sometimes between a yellow and a light orange can be tough to tell. Um, if you're lucky enough to find some with a yellow capsule, you can yell. Yell if it's yellow. That's another way to remember it. And O for orange. Orange is okay. Orange is okay is another way to kind of keep these two separate. I know some people are just avoiding it altogether because they're too hard to tell apart. Um, this was an interesting study I came along. So I have to tell you, the article that ran last week was an updated version of one that I'd written. I believe it was in 2012 or 2013. At that time, Illinois had not yet banned the sale of bittersweet. That occurred in 2015. So it's now technically illegal for retailers to sell non-native or Oriental bittersweet within the state of Illinois. But it's not a perfect system. There was a study done by Dr. David Zaya, who's with the Illinois Natural History Survey. This was 4 years ago, 2017. He and his team, that included, I believe there was faculty from the UIC, the Chicago campus as well, that went out. They bought uh, plants that were labeled American bittersweet from 11 different sources. Some were online, some were real brick and mortar stores. They went to Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, and Nebraska. And they used, in addition to visual analysis, which when the plants are young, they're almost identical. They're really even harder to tell apart when there's no fruit and there's no flowers. So they also use some genetic markers in their analysis to tell the species apart. Well, what they found was that 7 out of the 11 places that they bought these plants from were selling plants that were some of the plants that were mislabeled. So 7 out of 11 vendors had some of their plants that were labeled wrong. 54% of what they bought were that had been labeled American weren't. So that's kind of sobering, especially given that 4 of those 7 were in Illinois. So even when you look at the labels, sometimes it's not correct. So that kind of leaves you to think, well, what's a gardener to do? Well, what Dr. Zaya recommends is that you buy in person if you can, because just about well, the majority of the plants that they bought online as part of the research were the ones that were mislabeled. If you can get a slightly older plant, one that maybe has some flowers or fruit that you can compare to field guides or online guides, that would be helpful too, because the leaves, again, can be very similar, especially when the plants are young. Um, Talk to people, find out from the retailers, where was this grown? Where was this plant sourced at? Um, and then if you do happen to run across places that are selling mislabeled plants, he would still appreciate hearing from you to find out so he can talk to them and hopefully get them straightened out and back on the right path again. Now, I could talk about Oriental Bittersweet for the rest of the hour and still be dancing around the topic of what it's like to deal with on an up close and impersonal basis. So for that, we're actually going to share some tales from the front with a real live guest tonight. Steward Kim Haig from Johnson's Mound Forest Preserve has graciously agreed to come on tonight and talk a little bit about her experiences with this pernicious invader. This is a picture that Kim had sent me a couple of well, maybe a week or so ago. That vine there, that's an Oriental Bittersweet vine that they counted 20 rings on it, so 20 annual rings. This was a monster vine that was choking. Look what this plant does to these trees. It actually cuts into the living tissue. It squeezes it, and it literally strangles the tree that it grows on. Complicating things, as Kim has learned from her work with the Forest Preserve District, is that they can hybridize. On the left, there appears to be some berries here that have the qualities of both the native and the non-native bittersweet. That's compared to the twig on the right there, which Kim had clipped at Johnson's Mound. So, like I said, I could keep talking. I probably still wouldn't, in an hour's time come up with a decent story. But Kim, I know you have a lot, so I'm going to stop the share for a little bit. And Kim, are you with us? There we are. And you know what, Kim? We're still. Let's see. Can I unmute you?
There,
There we
am
go.
I, now, okay, now I'm unmuted. Yeah, I
Or
actually, I brought this big thing with me. It's 2¼ inches.
oh
Honey,
my word!
it's attacking me here. It's 2¼ inches, and it was all the way. This was just a part of it. Our our intrepid steward volunteer Dale had cut it down. It had completely killed a cherry tree. The cherry tree was about 40, 50 feet high, 40 feet high, and it had
Wow.
completely strangled it and killed it. So, yeah, it can get in. And I know my friend Mary Alice, who does a lot of volunteering, she said she has seen them at burnage up to 4 inches in diameter. This one's
Oh
two and
my
a quarter inches
gosh.
in diameter. So they can really be bad. You showed the picture of this one that we had. This is at my house, and I've lived here 21 years, and no one has ever been able to identify this plant, except we know that it climbs up the mulberry tree next to it. So I'm always cutting it down. This is the first year that I've actually noticed it blooming, oddly enough, after 21 years. But it's only grown into a big bush, but it does climb the mulberry, but I haven't let it kill it. But these were yellow when I cut it, which was just at the end of the week. But end of last week, I mean, and now it's turned red. So, and
Oh,
as you can see, if you can see, it is twirling around there. So, as I said, I've never let it kill anything. So we just started to see it at Johnson's on. We hadn't knowingly seen it before in the woods, but we've seen it mostly along Hughes Road. And I think, I don't know if seeds come in more because it's near the highway. But the other part, we've also seen it. We have it's 70 acres in the back, which is all open. It used to be a farm field. And we have 70 acres back there where they've planted oaks over the years. And we found a patch back there, and I don't have a picture of it because they burned out there now, thankfully. So there was a patch of it about 30 feet long, 30 feet wide, but there were no trees near it. So it was just this huge patch of bittersweet. And we don't know, we assume it's not native, but we don't know that for sure. And when I talked to Pat Chess, who's the head restoration ecologist, he said, because I was asking about the one that we saw that we picked there, actually that our volunteer Jeff picked, and it could be American, but I'm just not gonna. I don't want to chance it because, in fact, I just copied down from online, of course, but it was a little thing that says it is invasive, destructive. Birds will eat its pretty seeds and disperse them, but they will overtake landscapes, literally smothering trees, shrubs, and any plant in its path. So, twisting vine, sometimes 4 inches thick, and it will uproot large trees under its weight. So,
wow.
so it's like honeysuckle berries and buckthorn berries to me. It isn't even pretty to me anymore. So I just don't find it pretty because I know of its destruction. So
I have on my fireplace mantle, I have, and I don't know, it was years ago that I picked this thing up, and I thought it was pretty. Now, there wasn't any fruit on it, but it was the intertwined vines they
Yeah,
were probably, I don't know, maybe inch and a half, 2 inches thick, and it was just kind of cool. They looked like they were braided together,
yeah,
and it's impossible to pull them apart, and it's only been recently that I've considered um, how powerful of a force that would be
right,
exerting on whatever its host, whatever plant it's chosen to twine up. Now,
right.
Kim, that piece that you showed, the big chunk
The
there,
tree.
does that have hairy roots on it?
Well, it's not the roots. This was towards the bottom of the tree when Dale cut it. So this was about, oh, a foot off the ground. And, when if anyone has ever been out in the forest area and seen, poison ivy,
Yeah.
it has big, thick things, and it is hairy too, except the poison ivy is hairy all the way around. But this is actually, yeah, it has this hairy stuff
Just
along
like
with
what
it.
do they call those rootlets or
Yeah,
whatever.
it could be.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
didn't realize that bittersweet got those little growths on them too. I would have just, um, written that off as hairy poison or less hairy poison
Yeah,
ivy.
right, right. Because, yeah,
But
but
that's
that's always
good
a
to
good way to
know.
tell if it's poison ivy, if it's hairy. But some of that poison ivy just gets so big and thick. We saw one, I think it was a big wreck there, that it actually creates bark. It almost looks like it's I mean, like the outside of a regular tree. It actually creates little barky looking things.
Wow.
This does too. So, yeah, not pleasant.
Yeah, no.
So
No.
don't bring bittersweet into your house. In fact, some of us were taking a walk at Campton Township open space the other week, and there was quite a bit of it over there. And it is tempting to say, "Oh, I want to put it in a wreath because it's so pretty," but it's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad. I just would, since Pat Chess told me that it's, can hybridize, then it's, what's the point? There's
Yeah.
a lot of other really pretty non-invasive, non-killer vines out in the world that you can use besides that.
I have to say, back in the deep, dark recesses of Hickory Knoll's early history, I don't know, it might have even been our first Christmas that the Nature Center was open. We had an employee who was making decorations, kind of nature-based
Yeah,
decorations for the center, and the person found some long beautiful buried vines way at the back of the property. Hickory Knolls is a mile deep,
right.
a long, narrow property, and that person brought them dutifully back to the nature center and dribbled berries
All the way.
along the woodland path all the
Yeah,
way back. Yeah, before we realized when the person displayed their
yeah,
find, we
sure.
said,
It's easy to, well, and I
"Oops."
don't, and one thing I haven't explored is if, because a lot of the things, and I actually looked on the Midwest invasive plant site today, and there are 321 different invasive plants in Illinois right now that they have listed. But a lot of these plants are not invasive in either, Asia or Europe where they came
Mhm.
from, but get here and they have no enemies. So, and I don't know if Oriental Bittersweet does not do the destruction in the area of Asia that it comes from, because I don't know the exact area, but it'd be interesting to know if there's something that fights it off there.
Yeah. Now, I did a little reading too, Kim, and it sounds as though it does respond to fire. Is that
We hope so. I guess we'll have a good test, because out, as I said, out in the back, as we call it, the back 70 at Johnson's Mound, there's huge patch, and they just burned it there last week, and it was a great burn. I mean, it really, you have kit, dog, I have a cat.
yay?
Um, so it'll be very interesting to see, because Greg, my co-steward, has marked exactly where it was. So we'll be able to tell then next spring if it has really knocked it back. We hope so, because it was a
Okay.
huge, huge patch, and the frost had knocked it down, but we know, of course, it's very strong roots. So I can check back with you in the spring to see if it really knocked it back. We're hoping maybe it will. It does, fire does knock back a lot of invasive plants. So,
Well, Kim, we had a question here in the chat. Does the American variety wind around, do both types of bittersweet wind around the trees?
They
Uh,
are, I think the excuse me, the American is a vine, but it doesn't, it's more like just a regular vine. It doesn't kill the plant, doesn't kill
kind
the
of
trees.
kind of like a briar or that sort of
Yeah,
thing,
right,
where
right.
it'll use another
Yeah,
plant to.
right. Like a week one, we cut out in Johnson's Mountain out in the back 70, we cut grapevines down just to get more light on the oak trees out there. But the grapevines don't kill it. They just wind around it, and they wind around it really pretty well, but they don't kill it. So I'm assuming American bittersweet is like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, Jerry's just pointed out that the Trib ran an article about the invasive, the calorie pear,
Oh,
Bradford pear.
yes.
Kay, I know you shared an article from the New York Times too. I guess that word is getting out
Thank you.
finally about that invader as well.
Well, yeah, and when I went back to look at the fire back there, I saw some calorie pears still standing. I don't know if the fire hurt them, but at least I
Yeah.
could see them. It's like, yeah, and people plant them because they're beautiful landscape trees. They're really tall and they've got this beautiful branching habit, and they've got these ugly, smelly little things that you can't eat called pears, and they provide nothing for the birds and the wildlife. So, and they're very invasive. The seeds really take over places. So
Yeah,
don't
there's
plant them.
there's a
Yeah.
few, so Hickory Knolls, it's out on the west side of town, and we're right across from the Harvest Hill subdivision, and that was built up. I want to say that went up in maybe the 80s or 90s, maybe early. I know they're still building out part of it, so maybe it's a little bit newer than that. But the developer chose a lot of calorie pear as
Yeah.
um, what they landscaped with, and uh, serving on the tree commission, which is now the Natural Resources Commission. We have had requests from residents out there, can we just cut these things down? Because yeah, they smell, the flowers smell bad, the fruit smells bad, when the leaves fall on the ground they smell
Yeah.
bad, and then the tree itself is quite weak, and the growth habit doesn't get big and strong, it gets big and kind of brittle.
And and the other thing too with these non-native plants, when their leaves go on the ground, they don't decompose nearly as well as our native plants do,
Right.
trees do. And so it doesn't really, even in there when they're decomposing, they don't do much for the environment.
Yeah.
So
Kim, we had another question. Can we pull bittersweet if we find it?
I
Uh,
I would. I mean, we of course in the forest, I mean, I'm the volunteer, but in the forest preserve, we always herbicide. I know there's a lot of, I said my little buckthorn blaster there. We herbicide, and there is this is not just for buckthorn, but there is uh, route rodeo Roundup in here. Um, but and I know a lot of people are against herbicide, but on some things, if you don't herbicide it, it just, like for some of them, if you cut honeysuckle and buckthorn, it just loves to be cut and just comes back like crazy. So
mhm,
uh, we always use it, and we use this or something like it, because this just has a little bitty sponge at the tip. So when
mhm.
you dab it, it doesn't drip and get all over the place. But and it will, hopefully, we've used it on calorie pear, and we're hoping it works.
Gotcha.
So
Cool. Well, you know, oh wait, oh Jerry, is that Isabel who's
this
joined
is
you there?
Isabel. This is Isabel. She loves it when I'm on the computer. She loves to help.
Well, she's clearly more help than tech support puppy ever was. At least
Well,
she's getting some FaceTime and being cute.
yeah.
Um, did now as a steward, can you just maybe briefly explain for the group what, you know, how you became the steward of,
Sure.
and by the way, folks who aren't from this area, Johnson's Mound is one of the crown jewels in the King County Forest Preserve District. It's quite old. Dates back to the time of when I don't know if it was the CCC or the WPA that built the stone pavilion that's out there, and then the property itself, the mound is actually a glacial
Right.
formation. Most of the mounds in this area disappeared when people needed building materials. They
Right.
went in and dug out the rocks and the sand and the gravel and used it to build buildings and roads and things. Johnson's Mound though was preserved, and
Thank goodness. Yeah.
you, yes,
Well,
you
and
have the.
there is a part on the west side where uh, Pete from the Forest Preserve told me that they actually had started right before it became a forest preserve. They had started to excavate it, and there's a big. I mean, it's very hilly in there. It's not just one big hill; it's very hilly. But one side has a big, huge gash out of it. Yeah, I know, very high where they had started to excavate all the gravel underneath there. So, but it was the first forest preserve that became a forest preserve after the Forest Preserve Act went into effect. I can't remember that year. So it wasn't the very first forest preserve in King County, but the first one since when the act went into effect.
Gotcha. And then
So
you
yeah.
became steward by what? Blood, sweat, and tears, or
Well, I was through, as my friends know, I was in the first KCCN group with quite a few other people. So after that, I started volunteering, and Julia Bork was the volunteer coordinator, and she got me out to Johnson's Mound. And then there was a steward out there, and then after a little while, I got to be co-steward with him. So I got to learn the ways, and then he stopped doing it. And then I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't do it. I left for about 6 months, and then I missed it so much. And I asked Rob Cleve, who was the volunteer coordinator, if I could come back. So I did. So I've been there a total of about 11 years now. So
it's
but it's
awesome.
great. And now I have my co-steward is Greg Knipp, and he's also went through KCCN. So we have a good time. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that's how I did. So, and KCCN gave me my start, and then um, just learning from you guys, learning from the Forest Preserve people, taking classes, reading a lot, learning from other people. The thing that's really nice about all us nature nerds is that we all learn from each other. Everyone's happy to share stories and happy to say, I've got a new tool. We have tool fetishes, to cut things down. And so, yeah. So
Well,
it's
Kim, you have work days that are open to one and all, right?
right. We
Uh,
have first and third Thursdays from 9 to 12. And
okay.
sometimes we have them we had a special one on a Saturday. One of our volunteers, she and her husband are both Boy Scout leaders, or scout leaders, not Boy Scouts, scout leaders. And so we had the scouts come out and they helped us move brush piles for getting ready for our brush pile burn this winter.
Nice. Now we Laura wants to know, have you ever dealt with crown vetch? Is that something on
We
your
haven't
yours?
had that much of it there, but I know other places do. It's a nasty little thing, and it's very hard to get rid of. It's really pretty, sadly, like
Well,
bittersweet.
that's another one that I think was planted intentionally, wasn't it? Wasn't it used to stabilize
Well,
roadsides
and
and
it does spread and creates a really nice mat. I know they have quite a bit of it in the nature preserve part of Leroy Oaks on the south side of Dean Street, sadly enough. So in the area that has never, it's kind of a little remnant there, and it unfortunately there's crown vetch in there now too. And I haven't had to deal with it at Johnson's Mound because we don't, for some reason, haven't had it in there. So, but one thing we we do have, thinking of things, we have a non-native celandine poppy that someone planted at Johnson's Mound years ago with seeds, because as Pat told me, someone thought, oh, we should have that there. So they just threw the seeds in. So every spring we have to pull out non-native celandine poppy. So it's not as bad as crown vetch, but it's not nice either. So
so you've got lots of anonymous stewards out there too, helping,
helping,
helping
yeah,
or hurting.
helping, yes. We do have a really nice volunteer group. We get between 10 and 12 people each time, so it's nice.
Nice. Well, Kim, I sure appreciate you. Well, you and Isabel
Yeah,
joining us this evening to give your perspective on Oriental Bittersweet and what it's like to be a steward for the
yeah.
Forest Preserve District. And yeah, everybody, if you're looking to give back in any way, you've got maybe some time on was it the first and third
First
Thursday?
and third.
Um, Go out and
Yeah,
I know
and they can
it
all
would.
contact Rob Cleve at the Forest Preserve. I'll put his email in the chat
All right.
if you want to be a volunteer, and there are other places to volunteer. I like on the weekends too. So I'll put his email in the chat if you want to contact him, and get some information about volunteering too.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Kim.
Sure.
And Diane, thanks for pointing out. Yeah, there's a Bradford Pear article. Those of you in the KCCN Facebook page, you can check that out as well. We should do like a top 10 of the like the hit list for the invasive species in this area sometime. I'll maybe work on that for a future program. With that, Kim, you were really the star tonight. I just had a few other things to share with you this evening. A couple things that I've been carrying around. Oh, and Kim has now added the address if anyone would like to get involved in volunteering. That's Cleve Rob at caneforest.com. Um, and let's see, where did we leave off at? I think we left off here. Um, so anyway, let's move on. Um, so this was something I ran into at Delnor Woods. Talk about that park a lot. That's where our beavers are rapidly changing the course of the creek. We've talked. That's where we went on a search for sour gum. Lots of things happening in this wonderful neighborhood park that has a good chunk of natural area as its makeup. Well, the park itself has a series of ponds where man-made dams have created these ponds um, uh, within the creek that flows through the park. And I always like to look on the soft mud that lines those ponds because a lot of animals go there for drinks. And it's a lot of times you see, well, most of the time it's raccoon or deer tracks. But these tracks caught my eye a few weeks ago. And I just had this sort of gut reaction. That's a cat. So if you look over here on the left, you can see some imprints, and if you look on the right, there's another imprint. And what jumped out at me at first was the arrangement of the toes. If we look at this drawing here, this diagram from the Michigan um, DNR, they show the basic difference between a dog footprint and a cat footprint. Um, the dog usually will show claws. The cat usually won't. But when there's soft substrate like this, that can be a game changer. What jumped out at me with these tracks were one, the larger size, and then two, cat tracks on the heel. They have these three lobes, and I took a pen here and I drew on the photo on the right there. I drew around what to me looked like the three lobes of the heel of a cat. And then the toes, or like I like to call them, the toe beans, they just have a different arrangement to them. If you look again on the dog track up in the upper left, see how you can draw an X between the outermost toes and the heel pads. You can make an X, and you can keep your imaginary X in the white part, the spaces in between the toes and the heels. If you try to draw an X through the toes and the heel of the cat, you can't. Without going into, you can't use the negative space to make a track, an X in the track the way you can with a dog track. So that's what jumped out to me with these this particular track. And then here, the claws. So he said, DNR said that there's typically no claw marks, but any of you who have cats, Kim, if they step on soft skin, like say your thigh, and they'll use those claws for traction, and you'll get some claw marks, even when they typically don't show. The cat will use them, those retractable claws will come out when they need some traction. Look at how these claw marks appear. They don't seem to come down from the top the way they would if they were already out as they are in a dog, but they seem to be coming from within the toe here and here and here. So it just they look like they were poking down from within the toe as opposed to coming down from the front of the toe the way they would with a dog. I did talk to Bill Grazer, who's the county wildlife biologist, and Bill he's just such a nice guy. He entertains all my little notions that there might be an otter in the creek or the river, there might be a badger by the side of the road, there might be a bobcat by the pond at Delnor Woods. I sent him some of these photos. I didn't send him the ones that I drew on, but he politely said that his computer was down and his iPad he doesn't get good resolution on, so he couldn't say for sure. But he did say that about the time that this photo was taken, within about a week's time of when I took this photo, there was a bobcat that appeared on a game camera in western Kane County. So there was one out and about in roughly the same time period. So, is it Bobcat? Is it Bob the cat? Only that cat or the animal that made the tracks, whatever it was, can know for sure. So, this was a little bit. I'm on an email subscription with the Wisconsin DNR, and Um, they have barn owls there. This was the first barn owl nest found in Wisconsin in the last 20 years. The last record was in the 1990s. Um, and the way they found out about it was one of these little guys fell out. This was about a month and a half ago. Um, the barn owl fell out and was not terribly injured, but it was found. It was brought into a rescue rehabilitation facility and it was checked out and it was determined to be in good health. And so then it was returned to the nest. All of this happened in southwestern Wisconsin in La Crosse. This hollowed out tree was in someone's the back of their property, and it was just kind of luck that they happened to find the young owl out of the nest. Um, so it's the first record in Wisconsin, and they actually gave a nod to neighboring states in Indiana and in Iowa, and also here in Illinois, as well as down in Missouri too. They have all these states have in the last say 10 years or so instituted barn owl recovery programs. It wasn't too very long ago that barn owls were considered endangered here in Illinois, and loss of habitat was the main problem. These are birds that were accustomed to nesting in cavities or on ledges, but when barns started appearing across the landscape, they fairly quickly adapted to that new nesting option that they had. Well, what's happening to our barns now? They're going away. So barn owls were losing habitat. Some of you might remember back, gosh, probably close to 15 years ago, there were some reintroduction methods that were experimented with right here in Kane and in DuPage counties, and they didn't go so well. The barn owls, young barn owls, were released in various areas. Some of them just plain took off. They went to other states. We never saw them again. At that time, tracking technology was kind of large and expensive and uh, prone to not working very well. So some of the birds weren't able to be tracked at all. This was pre-satellite tracking. So wildlife biologists were trying to track these with handheld detectors, which if you're doing that with say a turtle, that's great. The turtle's not going to be moving, you know, hundreds of miles. It doesn't work so well with an animal that can fly. Long story short, reintroduction did not work, but creating or recreating habitat actually has worked really well. Officials here in Illinois looked at what Missouri and Iowa were doing, and doing successfully, and that was offering barn owls man-made cavities in the form of either a pole-mounted barn owl box or something that you can install on the side of your shed. Modern, it's not like farms have gone away completely, but as the old wooden barns are going away, a lot of times people are opting for metal buildings because they're a little bit easier to maintain. They lack the character and they lack the cavities that the wooden barns have. But you can modify those. You can actually buy a barn owl nest box that can be mounted on the side of a shed or a pole barn type of structure. So um, this is something that Illinois is actively promoting, and like it has seen a great deal of success. Barn owls that were on the state endangered list as recently as I want to say maybe between 5 and 10 years ago, they are no longer considered to be threatened or endangered here in Illinois. The recovery program met all of its goals, and who knows? We might start to see barn owls in this area again. But if you or someone you know has property that might have some attractive structures on it, or a place where you could put an attractive structure like this, there's a contact for you. You can also look up online plans to build your own barn owl nest box. Anyway, I thought that was a little bit of good news we could all use. Um, and this, I came home to this mess. I was at my mom's house for a couple of days over the Thanksgiving holiday, and I had filled the bird bath before I left, and I came home to this. Now, it is a heated bird bath, which I'll get to in just a second, but I thought, my goodness, what marauding band of birds came through and did this? Well, I started looking at what they left behind, and I said, well, they're clearly fruit eaters. And my first thought was robins. So I scrubbed out, sanitized the bowl, put more water in, and I say it was a classic example of just add water. Within, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes of going back in the house, look who starts to show up. And there were robins all over the neighborhood. I don't know if this was a migratory flock from somewhere north of here, or if it's a migratory flock from around here that's just sort of making the rounds. But um, they found the fresh water and they availed themselves of it. Um, Now this was like I said, within about 10 minutes or so of putting the water out there. Within about 20 minutes or so, look who showed up. A marauding band of starlings and a house sparrow. But I thought this wasn't a great photo. I didn't want to get too close to the window, and this was with my cell phone. But those are clearly European starlings. They are also birds that they actually eat a number of things. They can eat seeds, but they can also eat fruits. So they may have been responsible for some of that mess that I came home to as well. But I thought this would be a good opportunity to share with you. And some of you probably already know this, but I always think it's kind of cool. Um, the starlings in their winter plumage are really they're quite striking. Um, they've got this speckled look to them, and it's I don't know. I just think they're kind of cool looking birds. Uh, when they get into their breeding mode, they look like this. But unlike most birds that have to molt their feathers to go from one, uh, should we say, style of plumage to another, starlings achieve this just by wear. The white marks that are on the starling's feathers at this time of year, they go through December, January, February, March. They're out in the weather, the sleet, the snow, rains, winds. they're flying around, the ends of those feathers lose that light color, and look what's underneath. Look what we get to see in the springtime. So it's kind of cool. It's the opposite of what you'd think. Usually, when birds' feathers wear, they molt them and they get fresh new ones underneath. But in the case of starlings, I believe there's some other species that do that too. But it's their breeding plumage is actually the worn plumage that they are growing right now. So keep that in mind when you see our European starlings. And I can't mention starlings without also saying these guys make great pets. I tell you, if every person in the United States took in two starlings and kept them as pets, our invasive species problem with these guys would be gone. The starlings, the havoc they wreak is with regard to the habitat for our cavity nesting birds. They will frequently oust woodpeckers and other cavity nesting species. They're a big problem too with purple martins that can't make their own cavities but need a cavity to nest. And these guys will invade purple martin houses too if they're not properly equipped with a starling excluder. So um, they are doing really, really well in their adopted country. But I used to belong to a caged bird club, and one of our members had rescued some starlings from a tree that had been cut down, and she kept them as pets. They're great mimics. I believe they're related to myna birds, so they're able to pick up whistles and songs, repeat phrases, and things like that. They are, as we saw in our first slide, though, if they were the ones that were in the bird bath, they can be a little bit messy. Uh, as we get into winter for starlings and robins and a few other species, trees with fruits like this are really important. This was just these were some crab trees that are planted on a parkway here in St. Charles, but I know that right now they're laden with fruit. This was a huge fruit year for a lot of different trees, but this will be important food for these birds as we get into our colder weather, if it actually arrives. And then here, this is what the heated bird bath looks like when it's clean. I got this thing several years ago at Farm and Fleet, and it plugs in the warm weather months. The cord coils up underneath it. It's out of sight. Um, it was really easy. I got an all-weather extension cord to hook it up with. It plugs into the light fixture on my deck, and I just love this thing because it is a bird magnet all winter long. Just a little tip if you're looking for a holiday gift for yourself or someone else, maybe consider a heated bird bath. Now, just a couple of announcements. We have a sign, and some of you have already signed up for Tuesday, December 21st, Good Natured Hour, but I made a mistake. I should not have included that in the sign up. So we are not having a program on Tuesday, December 21st. Please make a note to yourself. To find something else to do that night. um, the other thing I just wanted to mention briefly, some of you know I'm a big fan of Chicago's very own WGN Morning News. It's really the only way I can take the news of today. These guys, they're serious in the delivery of serious stories, but they take a very lighthearted approach to pretty much everything else, and they don't take themselves very seriously either. I've done a couple of short segments with them. In October, we talked about the things that were inside your house that you shouldn't try to get rid of. Things like spiders, house centipedes, pseudoscorpions. Those are all what I would consider the good guys. Uh, anyway, we're going to be back on WGN, barring any major breaking news. We always have the chance that we'll get bumped, something of major importance comes along. But this Friday at 9:15, we're going to do a segment on uh, bottling up nature, preserving it, and giving it as gifts for the holidays. This was something I've written a couple columns about this, where you can take hand sanitizer and insert various nature objects. I first read about it being a way to preserve insects, and it's a great teaching tool. Any of you who have worked with kids and you struggle with ways to share fragile objects without legs or antennae or wings falling off, uh, try putting them in a clear jar with hand sanitizer, and it's wonderful. Now, I did use glass. Glass is fragile too, but there's lots of clear plastic options as well. But anyway, we're gonna try our hand at an on-air nature and holiday type of craft this Friday. That's December 3rd at 9:15. So tune in if you can, and we'll see how it goes. With that, I'm going to uh, shut down the share for tonight. And let's see, does anybody else have anything to share with the group for this evening? If not, um, greatly appreciate once again your patience in getting this show on the virtual road tonight. I'm going to ask our tech guy what this Zoom updating thing is all about because that was a new one for me. But anyway, have a lovely rest of your week, everyone. Stay safe, be well, and I'll look forward to seeing you back next week. Fingers
Thanks,
crossed.
Pam. Very interesting.
Thanks,
Thanks, Pam.
everybody. Thanks. Special thanks to Kim
You're welcome.
Yes.
and Isabel.
And Isabel. Yeah.
Take
Thanks,
care,
Pam.
everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh,
Thanks, Cam.
you're welcome, guys. Oh, I was gonna try and put the outro music on, but oh, there it is. Let's see. Nope, not gonna play. All right, everybody, have a great week. See you back soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.